Okay, back here with Jeff, we can put our shoulders down. We can put all of the Patriots stuff down that we just talked about. First 5 or 15 off the field. And again, this is going to be a twice a week segment only on YouTube. Thank you for watching and finding us here. Today with Jeff, someone who has gone from, a decade's spent as a Patriots beat reporter going national. It's a very different lifestyle. It's a lot different job. There are things that you need to know that you never would have even thought of had you just stayed at the Herald the Athletic in that past role. I want to get into that because I don't know what that's like. And I know people listening to this definitely don't know what the life is like of an insider. So I will start with this. The best parts, aside from coming on this podcast and me introducing you, is Jeff Howe, national NFL insider for the Athletic. Of your new job you've had for the last few years is what?
I genuinely enjoy learning about every organization in the league and how they do business and just the way they interact with different types of people, football ops or otherwise, media, whatever it is. I mean, just the chance to branch out and make connections and really pick the brains of, some of the most powerful decision makers in the NFL. Everybody does things a little bit differently. Developing and sustaining relationships with a lot of, prominent figures around the league and just learning about why they do certain things. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. Like we were so conditioned to learning how, Belichick's way, and for such a long time it was the right way. And you kind of looked at coaches who did it different ways or might have come across as a little more quirky, and maybe their winning formula wasn't sustainable, or they had some dips, whereas Belichick didn't until the last few years. There are a lot of different ways to win football games. And I think, that's become, I've been big on over the last year or so, like coaches needing to be player coaches. And that was not really something that I saw firsthand. I mean, obviously, and I'm not trying to do that as like to take a shot at Belichick. That's not the intention here at all. It's just from like learning the way that these head coaches or coordinators are interacting with their players, kind of seeing it maybe from the lens of their peers with other organizations or people that they used to work with, or from the front office, and kind of gaining their appreciation or hearing examples or what have you. And, so like when I kind of go all in on a topic or an opinion like that, it's because I'm kind of learning that it's true and it carries a lot of weight around the league. So that's been my favorite part, just learning how teams just do things differently. And they're just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. Like there are a lot of different ways to have success.
So I asked you that question on the top, one, because I think it's the easiest one, right? What do people want to know at home? What's the coolest part about the job? Notice you did not say texting head coaches or calling GMs, whatever you want, just to have that type of access, because that's not the job, is to be a fan who just gets to ask these questions. It's got to be for a story, or you're passing information. There's often, a transfer of that, right? Like the intel, the information is a currency. And that's, I think, how you partly build some of these relationships, in my limited understanding. And it's very delicate because the other part about this question, the flip side, what's the worst part of being an insider? I know folks like Adam Schefter. I don't know if Ian's ever sat for a story like this, but you find him in the Washington Post, New York Times. Shams Charania of The Athletic, your colleague who covers the NBA, has said not only are you just on your phone 18 hours a day, 18 hours, but you will have people pissed at you across the league, agents or players or coaches or GM, because of that exchange of information, or sometimes they look to you for things that might not be fair, whether it's favorable coverage or not. So whether it's one of those or something I haven't mentioned, what's something that fans at home thinking about the life of an insider with all this access and all these contacts don't know, hey, this kind of sucks a little bit?
I honestly, like, just when you get your ass kicked on a story, and it's not about like, were you wrong or whatever. It's just making sure that you have the sourcing on something. And like, you're not going to have every story. Like my network is.
Sorry, because I don't understand. Does this mean the timing of it, like the timestamp on Twitter from so-and-so tweeting the same thing, beat you by a couple of minutes, or someone went way deeper with their dive into a big story? What do you mean getting your ass kicked?
Well, yeah, initially it can be, all right, well, I have a relationship with, 3 really good sources for this one story or whatever. And then all of a sudden somebody else breaks it. And then it takes longer than 5 minutes for somebody to finally return a text or a call or something like that. And I'll be like, we've spoken every day for the last week, and now that it's actually happened, why are you not picking up the phone? What is going on here? Like, this is the type of stuff that drives me crazy. And I think to kind of set the scene, I guess, for that is, when I started doing this, it was all right, I got to get out on the road. I have to make these connections. The training camp tour is very real, and it's very important. I mean, that's the most important month of the year for me. And then the company, the Athletic, has done such a great job of investing resources and giving me the opportunities to go out and make these connections and relationships and build them up over the course of time, and trying to build and sustain that trust. And then, like, if I'm all of a sudden not able to deliver on a story, I'm like, oh geez, I hope they don't think they're wasting money on me, because those are the sort of doubts that you sort of have. And the hard part is, like, technically, yes, I'm supposed to be competing with Schefter and Ian on a lot of these stories, and Schefter's been doing this for 25 years longer than me. And when I took over at the Herald, I don't know how many people remember this who were listening, but like when I took over for the Herald, it was for Ian because he went to NFL Network. So he's been doing this role for 10 years longer than I have. So you just can't replace experience. And when I go out and I meet with people around the league, I'll say that. I'll be like, look, you've known Ian for 10 years or 15 years or whatever. You've known Schefter for 3 decades. Schefter might know your dad for, it might, like, these are relationships that you've built and trust that you've gained over the course of a long, long time. Whereas you just met me. And a lot of times in the summer, I come into training camp, and I just shaved my head, and like, they're just, it's you're trying, like, I don't know how my first impression is going to be here, but I know my first impression is not going to be nearly good enough that you're all of a sudden going to say, you know what, I give Ian all my stories. Now I'm just going to give them to Jeff. I'm realistic with that. And I say, look, I don't burn sources. I don't burn anybody. I never have. I certainly don't intend to start with you. Let's, I just want to be able to have you trust me enough that, we can start talking now. And then if I need something, if I can reach out, if you can get back to me, I would appreciate that. And then you start to see them, year over year, or, go back in another training camp or at the combine or whatever. And the relationships start to get better. And I guess that's going back into the good part of it. Like, just, again, building up the network and talking to people who just have different viewpoints and different levels of experience in this job. But when you think you've laid the groundwork to really work a story and then it all falls apart, that's the toughest part.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because again, I don't think that's something that people will think about. The example I gave at the start, right? Getting beat on Twitter, you would think, oh, your ass kicked by like 12 seconds. And let's be clear, I had Kendrick Bourne's real contract out, was waiting, because this is not permission to put out your certain news, but is this right? Is this accurate? And waiting to hear back. Schefter tweeting that 20 seconds, whatever it was, before I had Kendrick's deal done, still eats at me to this day. That makes you better. The part that I'm more curious about, though, what is most fulfilling about this? Because I think so much about this part of my life, and what is a larger part of your professional pie chart, if you will, is transactional. Like, it comes and then it's gone, and it's on to the next deal, it's on to the next story, it's on to the next whatever it might be. Where do you get to sit and find some kind of pride in this before you go on to the next?
Yeah, it depends on the story. I mean, having, like, the quarterbacks, the first 24 hours of free agency, or I guess backing it up to, Sunday, Baker Mayfield agreed to his contract. Sunday night, Russell Wilson. Monday afternoon was Kirk Cousins. The transactional stuff there, making sure you have all the details right. Even if Ian and Schefter have it 2 minutes earlier, at least I have the sourcing very quickly and stuff like that. Like, the one thing you really want to get under my skin on Twitter, be like, oh yeah, was your source everybody on Twitter? Like, no, don't be that guy.
Media literacy is at an all-time low, and I'm not even angry about those folks. I mean, like, I get why it gets under your skin. I just think it comes from a place of such ignorance of what actual journalism practices are. And right. I'm not saying I am a beacon of journalistic practices, but I will tell you, I have never, Jeff says never, any self-respecting journalist use other media reports as a source. You right. sit there and you wait and you look at the phone, or you make another call and try to dig this up, or an email or whatever it is. then you move forward. That's what a source is. It's not anything secondary. It's always, always, always primary person close to the situation or contract or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when, this is inside baseball, or I don't know how much people really care about this, but like the first week of free agency, so it's all fresh. I mean, Ian and Schefter could say, whatever. Andrew Callahan agreed to a 3-year, $36 million contract. And I could go to my people and they'll be like, look, I can tell you it's 3 years, but I can't give you the money. I just don't have it. And I'll have to say, Andrew Callahan agreed to a 3-year contract, something like that. Like I'll have to leave the money out, even though everybody else on Twitter has the money, certain random stuff like that. But you mentioned like what's gratifying, like having that first Monday of free agency, knowing how big the quarterback swing was going to be. It was going to be Mayfield. It was going to be Cousins. And then nobody really knew how quickly Russell Wilson was going to sign. But when he signed that Sunday night, it was like, okay, this is Baker's done, Russ is done. And then Kirk Cousins is going to sign, or he's going to agree pretty quickly, whether it's going to be Minnesota or Atlanta. So I go to all my people in all these situations. I say, I want to know how these 3 deals got done and what they might mean for the rest of the quarterback market. I told my editor that's a story I'm working on. He's all about it. Sitting there firing off a million different transactions. I have a responsibility to do trade grades for some of the bigger trades around the league. So I'm writing all these things, and I'm still trying to get this quarterback story done. And I turned that around by the end of Monday night. I think we posted it Tuesday morning. But the fact was, like, we got the inside story as to how all 3 of these deals came together in one story within less than 24 hours of all of them being complete. So that was really cool. And then the Calvin Ridley day, that was essentially day 3 of free agency. It was Wednesday with the negotiating period starting Monday. So a lot of the big names were pretty much done. Like you're at this wave where if you're a big name, you're probably scheduling visits. So the signings aren't really going to happen on Wednesday. Obviously there were some, but I was like, okay, I'm working this Calvin Ridley story and I'm going to find out what's going on with this. And I am going to be on top of it as much as humanly possible. And I got, I was told a half hour before Ridley agreed that the Patriots and the Jaguars were still the favorites. And this was from an extremely reliable source. And I tweeted that. I put that out there. But I also made sure of the fact that every time I kind of tweeted or reported some sort of update with Ridley, I did have people saying, look, they're like, I'm not going to sell you on the mystery team, but other teams are involved. So when I saw other people reporting that it's just down to the Patriots and Jaguars, and I was like, I don't think I'm crazy here. Like I'm being told there are other teams involved. And even if they are not the favorites, there are other teams involved. So I got some satisfaction, and I wasn't able to name the Titans. So that stings a little bit, but I got some satisfaction in knowing that all of the information that I was given up until that time was accurate. So, and then being able to write why and how the Ridley thing played out the way it did, with all of the, even going back to the trade terms with Atlanta and Jacksonville, and then, why were the Patriots and the Jaguars the favorites, and then until Tennessee came in. So just being able to, like, even though, no, I didn't break the Ridley signing to Tennessee, but I had it sourced almost immediately. And then I was able to put together about 1,000 or 1,200 word story as to how it all came together within a few hours. Like those are the things that really make it all worth it, just in terms of like the work that you're able to, the tangible work that everybody else, the readers, are able to see.
It's funny too, because you mentioned, the investment that the Athletic makes. Hey, you can go on this 3-week training camp tour. And I don't want to ask you too much about that, even though I think it's a fascinating exercise. I think people at home would love to know, hey, what's it like just going to hang out at NFL training camps and like getting a beer here and meeting a coach, 5:30 in the morning there and trying to develop these contacts. You and I have already talked about that. But the idea of whether it's the company investment or your own personal time, money, and energy paying off in the end, like this is all, you have a series of long games going on concurrently all the time, right? Like that's the job. It's building the relationships, the connections. And so I want to end with this, and this is definitely going to be a 15 off the field segment, not a 5-minute. Because people which, hey, knowing us, that was always going to happen. Right. But I want to ask you this. We come up in the business, and typically if you cover high school or some lower level sports, you've got stories about, oh, I was at a McDonald's at 10:58 and I filed this game story at 11 p.m. because they had Wi-Fi, or I parked outside of Dunkin' Donuts where I could pick up the Wi-Fi. I'm sitting in my car, whatever it might be. Crazy lengths you do to make then print deadlines, which I still have, or some extreme effort to separate yourself, which obviously portends well for the work ethic you'll have when you make it big. My example in the modern day is getting a call after doing TV at NBC from someone within the Patriots organization, midseason kind of venting. And instead of going back up to my house after parking, sitting on the side of the road and chatting with this person for an hour just to let them get it out and talk about what's right, what's, set me straight is always my point to them. Like, I want to have my facts straight. I have to spread them everywhere. And I was sitting so long, apparently, in my car, which I don't live that far from a police station. A cop came up and knocked on my window as I was sitting parked on the street. He goes, sir, can I see your license? And what is your business here, sitting here on the street? Thinking I was like drinking on a Tuesday or Wednesday or something. I was just sitting outside to not wake up my wife when I got home and speak at home inside my apartment to do that. But I know there are lengths, whether you're staying up late or talking in a weird place or getting Wi-Fi somewhere, that's got to be strange for you. So of all the places that you've been, all of the stories that you've written, all of the sources and sourcing that you've pursued, what's an example of an extreme length you went to get that information, to develop that relationship, to do something out of the ordinary to make sure you were better at your job than you were before?
I I've probably told you this story off air. I don't want to give away like some of my better secrets on air, but I found very creative places to sit and set up shop, when free agents might be hanging around or going to visit somewhere, and um, maybe I found a creative way to get them on the phone, because I'm able to find out where the phone might be ringing. So there are certainly different ways to try to set yourself apart. I mean, I just it's this might not be a great answer to the question, but like when I started covering the Patriots in '09 for Nesson.com, and like Nesson.com transitioned from like I use this joke all the time, but it's there's a lot of truth to it. Like Nesson.com before I got hired there was basically like, hey, the Red Sox are on at 7:05. Please watch our television channel. And then, it started turning into there was that '09 website boom with weei.com, and then csnne.com, which is now NBC Sports Boston. They all started investing, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, this is my first time covering the Patriots. I'd basically been a freelancer for 3 years out of college while living at home with my parents. I was still scooping ice cream at the place where I worked in high school. I mean, working like crazy like hours. When I was freelancing, I would cover maybe a Patriots press conference in the morning, and then I would go and cover like a high school football game in the afternoon. And then I'd go and I'd help lay out the section at the Metro West Daily News or at the Boston Metro, or maybe I'd go cover a college hockey game for Inside College Hockey. I mean, it was just like random, or I'd pick up a shift scooping ice cream.
You got to make it work. Yeah,
exactly. So just kind of grinding. So anyway, I get into the Patriots locker room in '09, and I'm like, how am I going to beat somebody like Mike Reese or whoever on all these stories? Like, it's not feasible. And I kind of set myself up for the long game then. I thought, all right, well, everybody here is worried about Tom Brady and all the veterans, and they have these relationships with them. Like, I'm at this point 26 years old, and I looked like I was about 17 at the time. I'm like, these guys aren't going to trust me. Like, I just look like some random kid in the locker room here. Like, so I'm going to basically just start talking to people who are my age, players or sources or whoever, and we'll see where that goes. And it was like, I remember, maybe this is again a lousy example, but I remember also in '09 when they were fighting to get into the playoffs. I think they'd win their last 4 games essentially to get in. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? I work for a website. We're not going to run out of room. I can just write playoff scenarios and tiebreakers better than anybody else. Like the really good beat reporters are not concerning themselves with playoff tiebreakers. They have bigger things to worry about. So I'm going to be the best playoff tiebreaker resource on the internet. And it was like, I'm going to write this thing as thoroughly as possible after every Sunday's worth of games. And this is where you can come find my stuff. And maybe 3 dozen people cared, but I knew that if I put in the work, I would set myself apart in whatever way that I could. And then it was, eventually in 2010, I started breaking stories, and I think people started to come to me a little more, and one thing sort of led to another.
Yeah. That's good stuff, man. I've taken up way too much of your time. A brand new segment and a whole hour-long podcast. If you've not listened to the podcast, obviously, please do. And subscribe to the channel. Jeff, you have also got a major fundraiser, which you do tremendous work on. If you want to spend a couple more minutes on that.
Yeah, thanks. April 28th, it's the Sunday immediately after the NFL draft at Wamisit Lanes in Tewksbury. We had our first fundraiser there last year. This is our third annual. The first one was at Long Meadow Golf Course up in Lowell. But now we're at Wamisit. My friend Donnie McLaren owns the place, and Janelle Wagstaff his manager has done, those two have done an outstanding job of putting this thing together for the last 2 years. And then our team, they're on our golf team for the Golf Fights Cancer Golf Marathon. We've also got Emerson Lotzia back, Randy Scott, Tom Curran is back on the team. We've joined forces with 1017 The Bull. It's wild to me how much this thing has sort of grown. But the fundraiser is April 28th. It's an absolute blast. We had such a fun time last year. It's from 10 to 2, so it's an early, get in, get out type of deal. We're going to have, so it's at Wamisit. If you're unfamiliar with that, bowling, golf bays, arcade, full bar and food, lots of stuff to do. We have raffles and auctions getting lined up. I'm not ready to advertise the auction and raffle items publicly yet. I have told you about some of the stuff.
It's unbelievable. It's a crazy list of items. And where's all the money going to?
It's clear. All for One Mission. So One Mission is an organization locally here. Thanks for bringing that up, because I definitely forgot the most important part. We're raising money for One Mission, and they help kids and families who are fighting cancer. And their big thing is, helping just try to find, put some shine in their day. One example that I heard at the One Mission Buzz Off at Gillette a couple years ago, what the Ashley at One Mission was telling a story about how, like, she ran into a mom who went up to her and was like, she just paid for a $10 parking pass or a parking garage ticket while her child was getting treatment. And she was like, this was like the greatest thing ever. Like, thank you so much. And, to an outsider, that's a $10 parking pass. But to that mom, she was thinking, you know what? My child is going through cancer. This is the roughest moment of our lives. It feels like the world is closing in on us. But that $10 parking pass symbolized to her the fact that the community was behind her, and a bunch of strangers had all pooled together money. And again, it's $10. You don't need a bunch of people to pool together $10, but somebody somewhere donated $10 at some point, and they felt like that person had their back in an important fight. They do other things where they'll bring in care packages or help the kids as they're going through a hospital stay. They'll bring in, princess dresses or Disney themed stuff, or they'll give a spa day to the parents so they can try to take some sort of break from what is obviously the hardest moment of their lives, to try to just take their mind off of stuff. So that's what One Mission does. The reason why I've gotten so involved with them is, in 2020, we did an online Twitter campaign to try to raise money for One Mission during the lockdown, the COVID lockdown, basically. And then I didn't do anything in 21. In 22, they coincidentally reached out to me in March, and it was right around the time that I had surgery to remove my thyroid cancer. And they were just curious if I was interested in helping out again. And I was like, actually, you know what? Like, the timing of it is kind of perfect. I just went through this whole thing, so it's a little more close to home now at this point. And they were like, oh my goodness, like, do you need anything? And it wasn't like, they weren't trying to send me a care package, but I was like, you know what? Yeah.
But they had an XXL princess Disney dress, and you have looked so stunning in that dress every time I've seen you since. Yes.
I'm a big Moana fan. What can I say? So I was going through what I eventually realized was survivor's guilt. And it was just like a mental battle on the heels of going through, the surgery and getting rid of the thyroid cancer and all that other stuff. And they put me on the phone with a couple of people who were able to really help talk me through this. And that was, it was huge. And it was a big part of my journey. So since then, and getting to know what One Mission does, we've put this team together that continues to grow by the year, and it's why we keep coming back. And through the support of Golf Fights Cancer, we have all pulled together over, thanks to matching donations, thanks to the donations that we have amassed on Twitter and at this fundraiser, and then through matching donations from Golf Fights Cancer, we have raised $200,000 in the last 2 years, and we're just going to keep going.
My man, it is an outstanding fundraiser. Folks who have listened to this podcast know how I've tried to support, dear friend of ours, Doug, and his late daughter Hallie's fight with cancer. This helps make the lives of people like Doug and Hallie and her mother and sister easier during the worst times of their lives. Like there's not a better place money really could go to aside from the actual cure. So whether you're donating to Boston Children's to get on this podcast or donating to One Mission, you are putting your money in the best possible place. And we thank you for that. If you want further details or anything written out, visit Jeff's Twitter. Everything you can find right there. I would encourage you to go. My problem will be I am too exhausted to go anywhere Sunday after the draft, which is just a sit-at-home marathon. It's going to be a great weekend, and I appreciate you sharing all that and doing all the great work. $200,000. That is not a small number. It's not a medium number. It's not a large number. That is an outstandingly massive and magnificent number. So thank you as always. You're the best, man.
Thank you. And actually, one request for anybody listening. I'm trying to get 4 Red Sox tickets for a game this year as part of the raffle, as part of a package that I think would be really, really cool to put together. I'm short on the tickets. I'm trying to get creative into trying to find 4 tickets to any game after April 28th. If somebody knows somebody, a season ticket holder who's looking to offload a 4-pack at some point, please hit me up on Twitter or email me or whatever. All my stuff is pretty easy to find. So that would be a huge help. But thank you for giving me the chance to mention this stuff. It's been surreal to see this grow over the last, I guess, now 3 years.
You got it. Anytime. And that has been 5 off the field. Supposed to be 15. Now 25 off the field. Jeff Howe, National NFL Insider for The Athletic.